Oh man, it's been a rough couple of weeks. I'm gonna be honest. But through these days, I've had the time to sit and think a lot about the issues that annoy me. Really, I want to talk about shit that annoys me. But top of the list is the fact that being part of the South African podcast and social media discourse has taught me that there is a symptom that I feel is actively threatening and will increasingly begin to hinder authentic, genuine content creation from opportunistic trend seeking. What do I mean? The climate of the internet as it is has been a brooding fest of polarities. The internet grows through division. It's an extension of people in general. We tend to be most passionate about the things we disagree about more than the things we agree about. Disagreement, conflict, so to speak, riles us up more than actual unity. And it's a natural thing because it emerges from the place we all have to defend what we value. So when others dismiss or at the very worst try to eliminate or erase qualities, aesthetics, tastes that we hold dear to our heart, we are and have hardwired ourselves to be defensive. Because it comes from the place of one challenging those who challenge you, but also it comes from a subconscious place of challenging yourself. And I think the second part is a place that not many people reach, because when you are surrounded by an echo chamber of people who mostly agree with you, your capacity to challenge yourself wanes over time. It rusts, it blunts, because you haven't trained yourself to engage with anything that doesn't really ask fundamental questions about the things you have assumed are the way that they are. So when it comes to social media, it has exposed just how many people are more comfortable in affirming what they already know than challenging why they believe that to begin with. But the beauty of it is that no matter how long or how vigorous or how spiteful or smearing your attacks on those you don't agree with are, you can never fight the process of having to question yourself. Life does that. It constantly puts you in a position where you have to ask yourself, why do I believe the things that I believe, and are they worth believing? Are they working? Are they actually producing the quality of life, the worldview, a way of assessing and analyzing reality that suffices to the things you think you want or you need? So I would like to start this conversation off, because that is what it is. I am hoping that as I ramble on, those watching and really listening, not just hearing what I'm saying, give themselves the time to not only allow themselves to be challenged, but to challenge themselves too. and to in return honor that spirit by challenging me as I challenge myself. See, this is the beauty of how social media and the internet will begin to truly work with us, not just for us. Because there are people who are content with social media just working for them. And that is, there is a large majority of South African YouTube channels and podcasts that have been literally designed on the foundation of YouTube and the general internet attention economy working for them and not them working with it. The difference there is when you want the machine to work for you, you are simply focused and channeled on having your views affirmed and on using sensationalism to become the tool of your methodology. What do I mean? When you're not prepared to question yourself, the only thing worth doing is to go around trying to expose others. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that is the fundamental majority of South African YouTube. Shit, that might be the majority of YouTube in general. But at least as a researcher, as a media analyst, and as a content creator, I've realized that the West, because of its bigger economy, has a far more diverse attention economy that consists out of people who are really trying to bridge the gap between entertainment and critical theory. To be critical is to first analyze yourself before you analyze the world. Is to look at your tools of analysis. We all judge, but we don't often ask ourselves, what tools are we using to judge? See, that is what critical theory is. It's asking yourself, what is the foundation of the way that I judge other people? What is that based on? If I say so-and-so has a shitty album, if I say there's this problem with South African social media, what is it based on? So critical theory involves having to first go through the foundational aspects that make up your argument. So before you argue, you explain what your argument is based on. For the life of me, this does not happen often on the internet. You'll go through a timeline and it will be mostly people presuming to already understand what you meant when you comment, and most of the time it's a whole bunch of assumptions that are really projections of what they think you're trying to do and not really engagements with what you're doing. People hardly ask why. They assume why and then they attack you based on that assumption. And that is how hot takes and this brooding bed of opinion driven content goes viral. It is based on humiliating, dismissing, denigrating that which we are against, many a times rightfully so. You might be against something that truly does genuinely pose a danger to the livelihoods of people. But the way you go about arguing about it can sometimes add more of a problem to the essential problem itself. And this is how most of Twitter spirals out of control. The mode of the way that people argue expands the problem that they think they're arguing against, because they argue against it problematically. See? And it creates this circular reasoning where, because people are not prepared to analyze themselves, to question the basis of how they judge, they do not regard coming to the foreground with a level of analysis, with a level that shows that they're not just trying to destroy, but they're trying to build. Because what happens when we've cancelled what we do not want? What emerges from that? Nobody thinks about who has to pick up the pieces and build when we have destroyed what we do not want to see, what we do not want to experience. But it is still up to us. So to all those who openly endorse cancel culture, are you prepared to build when you have destroyed? Do you know what it takes to build when you have destroyed? Because it is very easy to destroy, but it is difficult to build. Destroying just takes a full, consistent, collective assault. And isn't that what cancel culture is? It's a bunch of people who agree ganging up. The points might be politically valid. The theory might be deeply invested and thoroughly understood, but the methodology does nothing but try to crumble an enemy. It doesn't express the larger symptom. I mean, I think by now, if you've watched the Headspace, I always talk about the larger symptom being capitalism, which in and of itself is part of the extended neo-colonial project, which is driven by whiteness. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please go into the foray of all of our episodes, because now is just simply an opportunity for me to talk about the bases of the analysis that the Headspace uses. The Headspace attempts to grapple with pop culture as it is used by the industry of capitalist reproduction and what that means to the African person. It says, what do African artists truly have to offer in a world that already tries to use them and perceives them as non-living entities who are there to be slaves to the system? Can one truly navigate around these limitations? So coming to that, the budding arena of podcasting, of people trying to get their opinions across, is an incessant urge of the experience that we will always have. But I think there is a larger dynamic at play that most people are not aware of, because we are so easily swallowed up by our own biases that we don't take the time to realize that the algorithms are coding conflict and are allowing us to only see, engage with what we're used to. So the purposes of this rant is to challenge you watching out there. How often do you intentionally listen, watch, try to understand something you totally hate, something you just aren't into? Because your capacity to be able to tolerate difference will thoroughly improve your capacity to articulate yourself. Because it will come from a place where you've taken the time to understand why people would actually wake up to do the things you consider undoable or not worth doing at all. So in this economy which encourages diversity and difference, how do we live amongst each other knowing that we will never agree on everything, and that there will be things that we will disagree about, in fact have to disagree about? Is there an art to disagree? I think there is. And I think the art to disagreeing is an understanding that the enemy is not the person you're agreeing with. I mean, not to go all biblical, but it's real. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. Asilu na bandu, silo ne mimoy. In other words, ideas are what push people. So if you engage with the ideas instead of trying to personally attack the people, then you get somewhere. But when you get caught up in the antagonisms of people's unique idiosyncrasies, and you make fun of people's ears and their weight and the shape of their eyes, you're not engaging with the idea. You're just trying to humiliate a person. And you're adding to the problem when you resort to that kind of engagement. Cussing people out, telling them that they ain't shit, is fun to do. I mean, we've all probably done it to some capacity, but it really is part of the problem. So if what we want to do is something more, if what we want to do is actually get to a place where we possibly understand each other, even if we don't end up agreeing, but we at least understand where we can stand in relation to each other. How far or how close can we be in contact when it comes to certain issues, if at all? Which issues are inevitably going to bring us to a place where one has to fall to the ashes to make way for another, or when ideas can actually coexist. Because that's the beautiful thing about existence, is there's always diversity. There's always going to be variations of styles. There's always going to be things fading in and out. But there is also going to be the need to see that which is not useful and that which has actually become threatening to our overall development. And when we are actually holding dear and fast to something which is not only destroying us but destroying others. Case in point, things like hegemonic masculinity or toxic masculinity, homophobia. No matter how comfortable you are in the view that gay people are not supposed to exist, you have no proven right. You might feel that you have a religious right, an ideological right, a philosophical right, but you have no way to prove that gay people should not exist. The best you can do, the best one can do, the best thing anybody can do is position any of their most radically oppositional views in a way that acknowledges their separatist tone. You know how kind of like back in the day the Ku Klux Klan had a meeting with Marcus Garvey because they both agreed on the fact that they hated each other so much they couldn't coexist with each other, and that's exactly why they could work with each other to help separate themselves from each other. You know, the weird irony of how when you agree to separate, the separation becomes the agreement. And on social media, people's separative instincts tend to overlap into this need to affirm what has to ideally exist. And the truth is, there is no ideal, valid truth. At least no proven one. All we have is a bunch of subjective cultural norms we've tried out and have sentimental value towards because we still feel to some capacity they are important to us. But that doesn't give us any jurisdiction to objectively claim that what we like, want, is what should and needs to exist. We live in a variety and an ecological framework that means that anything that can exist will exist. And when it does and comes into contact with you in ways that rear violence, hostility, and danger, the most responsible thing we can do to engage with that is to resist with a sense of understanding the groundworks of what we are actually fighting. Again, the idea, and not the vessels that push these ideas and give them agency. Because when we get caught up in the bodies, all we do is we create a warfare of bodies against bodies. And these ideas continue to fester and live on. So, the tone and the flavor of South African social media, because of the obvious, quote-unquote post-apartheid lingering sentiments, the fact that most South Africans hide their drastic unhappiness with dance music or humor, when we live in a country, in fact in a world, which demands the urgency to just move back and think about where we really are and what is the best thing we could do with ourselves through all of it. Huge ask, but it's truthfully huge times. I mean, I said in the beginning that it's been a tough couple of weeks. That's just personal reference, and I know that everybody watching this is probably going through some kind of shit. Indeed, that's possibly why I decided to do this rant, and Dakeza gave me the beautiful privilege of having to express my innermost thoughts to you, the audience, so that we can get to a place where the headspace becomes an open portal for us to learn how to disagree with each other. Because I love the haters. They allow me to assess where I might possibly be wrong. They also remind me where I definitely think I'm right. So the opposition strangely becomes a necessary part of what I do, what everybody else does. I think in a weird way we don't admit the fact that without all the things we claim to be against, we might not know what we're actually for. The fact that antagonism plays a major role in laying the groundworks to where we want to locate ourselves. That if there wasn't something we knew we didn't want, we might not be clear of what we really do want in the first place. So with that being said, podcast and chill is dead. And I think it's because people are beginning to at least feel and not realize that a podcast solely dedicated to extracting controversy and scandal out of the economy of our culture cannot be sustainable, because it has nothing to say when nothing is going wrong. Can we have beautiful yet controversial episodes about the things we do appreciate, the things about South African culture that we've learned, the archive? Can we talk about the story of where we've gone through so far in a way where we don't need a guest at the hot seat to titillate us about some shit that just happened? Can we make the people we praise and put in places of influence and power truly become vulnerable in our faces without us making them feel vilified for their very, very human mistake? I don't know. All I know is what this podcast attempts to do is to move in the direction of something like that. So with that being said, my name is Vida, the brother from the ancient mother. And if there truly is a problem with South African podcasting, we're trying to become part of the solution. And in a weird way, by doing that, we will do a lot of problematic things, and it will be through the dialogue we have with you that will teach us where we need to go next. There is no map, we have no great master plan. We're just three cats who love this country, who love black people, who love our history, who still have enough promise in the possible futures that exist artistically and creatively for us to speak on behalf of those things and to call ourselves out and in when we're fucking up. When I'm fucking up, when this whole world is fucking up. We need to learn how to exercise our freedom to speak against each other in ways that truly teach us that we can only learn how to be right when we know how wrong we really are. So holla at me in the comment section and tell me where it's all just going wrong, because that's possibly the only way we could understand what right even means. Much love.